All right.
Cindy, you ready? Brady, y'all ready? Good morning, everybody. If everybody could take their seats, fix to get the program started. I'm Mac Wade, the Executive Director for the Port of Morgan City. I want to welcome everybody for being here today. And on behalf of the Port of Morgan City and the Parish Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness, I'd like to welcome everybody. We got a full program today, so I'm going to go ahead and let...
So first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Jimmy Broussard and the St. Mary Parish Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness for joining forces with us. We've been doing this for a number of years, and we appreciate our partnership. One of the things that I'd like to do is just introduce... I don't think you can hear me if I don't have the mic. Can y'all hear me back there? Okay, I'm gonna be loud. I can do that for now. Okay, first, rather than missing someone, I'd like to do the introductions this way. First of all, we have one Port Commissioner, and I don't know if Mac introduced you. I wasn't listening. Stephen Carnes, can you please stand and... Thank you. I'd like for members of our state and federal delegation or their representatives to please stand, which would be like Lee and anyone else. Okay, Lee Turner, introduce yourself.
Lee Turner with Senator Bill Cassidy's office, and Sarah's on her way with Senator Kennedy. She'll be a little bit late.
Awesome. Okay. And also, I just got a text from Christian Bergeron with Congressman Garrett Graves' office. He sends his regrets. He's under the weather, so he stayed home. Do we have any mayors and council people? Our parish president, of course, is going to come up in a minute, but anyone from any of the parish or city councils, mayors who are here that... No, I guess not. Okay. All right, so before we begin the program, I think, Jimmy, you want to introduce Sam? Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. We have Parish President Sam Jones here to start us off today, and let's give him a hand of applause.
The mic doesn't work? Okay. All right. No, that's okay. I don't speak very loudly, so I've been knowing Jimmy since he was like 2 years old, and he worked for me when I was the mayor of Franklin. Jimmy worked for me when I was mayor of Franklin. He's been a National Guardsman. Are you retired from there yet? He's retired National Guard. We've been through hurricanes before, including Andrew and those that have been rough, so there's a lot of experience here. The first hurricane I went through was Hurricane Audrey, 1957, I think, that hit the Cameron and killed 500 people. Worst case, worst case. The worst hurricane I've been through since when I worked for Kathleen Blanco was Katrina, of course, and then we had Audrey later. We never know when they're going to come. You just have to be prepared all the time. You just have to have your plans in place. Jimmy's an excellent leader. When I got elected, he says, "You're going to keep me?" So, yeah, that's a thought. But I said, absolutely, and I think we're in good hands. I'll just close by saying this. What I've learned about Washington is filled with people who are 11 members deep, all authorized to say no. And if you find that 12th person that's authorized to say yes, you can get things done. And I'm not attacking the Congress, but it's the administration. It's just when George Bush was there and Katrina was there, it was just really tough. But it was a horrific hurricane. It was a destructive hurricane, and it took us eventually when he appointed someone who was authorized to say yes, we really got moving. So don't be frustrated. Just put your head down and work. When Hurricane which one was that? The last one that we had in Franklin? The hard one. Andrew came. It was 2 months, every day of just working hard, trying to get things done, and making sure that people were given the things that they needed to survive. We did not have any.
Okay, so we're going to begin with our presentations now. So, Mr. Doug Kramer from Lake Charles National Weather Service, please.
All right, good morning, everybody. Doug Kramer, National Weather Service out of Lake Charles. Very happy to be here. This is always we do probably about 35, 40 of these meetings every year across the coastal areas of Louisiana and southeast Texas. Yesterday I was in Hardin County, Texas, so in southeast Texas, doing this same meeting. But this is kind of always one of the bigger ones that we do here, and it's always great to be here. You know, last year we had some really good news for everyone in terms of what the season outlook was going to be like. And unfortunately, I think this year that's not necessarily going to be the case. We do have some indications that it's going to be an active Gulf and Caribbean season. Last year we talked about El Nino and the strength of that El Nino being a problem as far as creating a lot of wind shear across the Caribbean areas and the Gulf of Mexico, and we're expecting a quiet year, and indeed that's what happened. We did have a lot of named storms out in the Atlantic Basin, but really none of those storms were able to get into the Gulf or the Caribbean. There was a couple, but for the most part it was a quiet year. The year before that was a quiet year as well, but all indications would suggest that we are looking at an active season across the area. Tropical cyclone tracks across the Atlantic and the Pacific basins, you can see that it's a little bit more difficult to forecast in the Atlantic basin because they can pretty much have it anywhere, they can track anywhere. The Pacific basin's a little bit more of a narrow zone where they can occur, although I will say I've got an example of Acapulco, Mexico from last year, an example where it was a very difficult situation and created a lot of impact for those folks down there. And we'll talk about rapid intensification on that here in just a little bit. 2023, we did have a couple of storms that tracked through the Gulf, but for the most part, most of that activity stayed out in the Atlantic. And really, in terms of busyness, it was a busy year in the Atlantic, but again, there wasn't a whole lot of hurricanes, tropical cyclones making landfall across the United States. So that was a good thing. As we get into 2024, those are the names that they're going to be using. So the National Hurricane Center came up with these. And some of these names have been used in the past. Sometimes they're retired, but these are going to be the ones that they use. Starting out with. Now we talked about, you know, the potential for an active season, and really this is why. Our ocean temperatures across the Atlantic, the Caribbean, the Gulf, the entire basin, they're hot. They're well above normal. So that's going to create active activity. And then also our INSO phase. So right now we're coming out of that El Nino. We were in a strong El Nino last year. We talked about how that really shielded us from a whole lot of tropical cyclone activity. And that is quickly transitioning into neutral and then forecasted to go into La Nina. And so you think about the timing of this transition and the rapid nature of this transition that is expected to occur. It's very similar to 2020, and we know how active 2020 was. And you know, and it's very, not only is it similar, but it's occurring during the same months. like 2020 did, where in the wintertime we were coming out of a strong El Nino and then rapidly going into neutral and then La Nina for hurricane season. And that's, there's pretty good indications that's going to happen. As a matter of fact, we're looking at about an 85% chance of being in La Nina by the time the heart of the hurricane season occurs. And so typically that's going to create less wind shear across the Gulf and the Caribbean, and that's going to promote storm development across those bodies of water. We talked about the anomaly, sea surface temperature anomaly across the oceans, and you can see we're just well above normal across the entire basin. There's a few spots in the mid and northern Atlantic that are a little cooler than normal, but for the most part, we're kind of talking up here, the entire basin is warmer than normal at the moment, and this was as of March 25th. So, El Nino's tropical influence, this is kind of what we were under last year. The Gulf and the Caribbean, fewer hurricanes, more hurricanes in the Pacific. La Nina, which is what we're going to be in, that typically promotes more activity. Let me see if I can go back to that. And I don't think the clicker's working properly. Is there a way you can maybe go back to like four or five slides ago? Something happened with the clicker there. That may have been operator error. Can you scroll up just a little bit? Yeah, way right there, right there. That's fine. Yes, ma'am. Right there, that's fine. And then go ahead and click slideshow. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. So, all right. It's El Nino. There's La Nina, so that's the pattern we're going to be in this year. Typically more hurricanes, and just to kind of look at those correlations there, given the specific INSO, and these are just major hurricanes. So these are category 3 and above, and you can see El Nino, we typically have less. La Nina, you can double it, and then if we're in a neutral pattern, you can almost triple that. But when you're completely focused on the Gulf and the Caribbean, there's not much of a difference between La Nina and neutral there. All right, so we're going to go into our forecast here. This is actually 2024 forecast from the University of Colorado State University, and they just put this out last week. And you can see they're forecasting 23 named storms, 11 hurricanes, and 5 major hurricanes. And then you can correlate that, compare that to the average, which is the numbers on the right. So we're well above normal on the Colorado State forecast, and that's just because of the factors we've already talked about as far as going into La Nina and the warmer than normal ocean temperatures. AccuWeather also put their forecast out a couple of weeks ago. They kind of went in ranges, which is what the National Weather Service actually does as well. And you can see 20 to 25 hurricanes is being forecasted, so pretty similar to Colorado State, 8 to 12 hurricanes, and then they're going 4 to 7 major hurricanes. And there will be a couple of other forecasts that come out. The National Hurricane Center, National Weather Service forecast, that's not going to be released until about May 25th. So at the end of May, they typically like to look at things at the last minute and then bring out their forecast about a week before the hurricane season starts, which is June 1st. And then also there will be another one coming out with the Weather Channel. They do have some hurricane experts, and I think they'll put those out about the first or second week of May with the Weather Channel. So I would expect similar forecasts out of those two entities. When it comes to impacts with hurricanes, you know, the storm surge by far has the most impact, not only just on infrastructure, but also on human lives and safety as well. We do have tornadoes that can typically occur, and then also the excessive rain with the freshwater flooding, that's also becoming more of an issue. But the storm surge is by far the biggest problem. And you can get situations like Hurricane Ike that tracked into the Galveston Bay, and it was a Category 3, but from satellite, you can see the saltwater burn scar across much of the Louisiana coast. From that, even though it didn't hit Louisiana, it's just a good reminder that storm surge can have impact well away from the center of the eye. And Ike was so impactful just because of the diameter of the eye was so big, and the slow nature of its movement created a lot of storm surge. So storm surge isn't always necessarily correlated to the strength of the hurricane. There's other factors that can go into that, and we tend to model that pretty well. Hurricane Laura, that had about over 20 foot of storm surge, potentially maybe up to about 21 foot. And this is the location of the record storm surge in Louisiana. It's just a couple miles east of the South Cameron High School is where that house is, where we measured that storm surge, record storm surge. And again, that was from Hurricane Laura. Probably a good thing for Lake Charles that it jogged to the right just a little bit, or that record storm surge would have went up the Calcasieu and likely into the city of Lake Charles. And just a reminder, we do have these storm surge maps. It does not work very well for Morgan City because we've got the levee system. I was actually here about 6 weeks ago meeting with Mac and Jim Broussard about that, and they kind of took me around to see the levee, and we talked about storm surge maps and the forecast that we provide, the graphics that we provide you all. We're working on that right now to make sure that we accompany that levee system. There's just some unknowns with that. I think it's a good levee system, though. I think that they'll provide a lot of protection for the city. So it's just a matter of trying to develop storm surge forecasts around that. It just kind of causes a little bit of a problem. So that's kind of why the Hurricane Center, we have that kind of dashed out. Port Arthur's the same way. They've got a federal levee over there. And they break down these storm surge maps into categories. And again, I just want to reiterate that storm surge isn't always necessarily correlated with the strength of the hurricane. There's other factors that can go into that. But we got to start somewhere, and we have that as a reference for you all. Can't forget about the tornado risk. That typically is going to happen on the right side of the hurricane. And you can see from 1995 to 2024, when you plot all the tornadoes that occur with landfall and hurricanes, you see almost about 99% of them occur on the right side of the eye of the hurricane there. And the excessive rain, this is from Harvey, southeast Texas, southwest Louisiana. They're just devastating over there, the amount of freshwater flooding that we had from Harvey, and that can typically happen, if you get something that stalls out. 60 to 65 inches of rain there in Beaumont, Port Arthur was pretty devastating. And then if you were to get something like that in the Morgan City levee system, that might be hard to pump out. So something to think about with that. And then timing of arrival graphics. Most of you are aware that we do create those isolines to give you not only the probability of hurricane force winds, but when we're expecting those hurricane force winds to get into a specific area. I'll be utilizing these this year quite frequently during our briefings to our emergency management and our elected officials when we have our hurricane forecast briefings. And also keep in mind that when the Hurricane Center, when they create these hurricane forecasts, they're developing about 1,000 different models when they create their official forecast, and it looks something like this. And basically, they take a model and they adjust the additional conditions with errors that they've seen in the past with their modeling. And so that's how they're able to develop that probability, was actually looking at the 1,000 different models, the timing of those models, where they're placing the eye, where they're placing the eye, and they can develop those probability graphics. And this is a technique that they've used to improve the accuracy of hurricane forecasting. Also keep in mind the cone. This is basically an area where 67% of the time the center of that hurricane is going to track within that cone. So 33% of the time it's going to track outside of that cone. So, and that's just something that we have. It's not a perfect forecast. We're never going to be perfect at this. We'll continue to get better. But just keep in mind that a situation like this, We got something coming up the Gulf. It's expected to hit the center part of Louisiana. It could veer left or it could veer right outside of that cone. So anytime we have any type of cone near Louisiana, we need to be monitoring that and looking at the updated forecasts that come out. All right. Let's see here. One thing that's new this year, gosh darn it, I did it again. One thing, you don't have to go back, that's fine. Actually, could you go back 2 or 3 slides? If you could just go back. One thing that is new this year, we do have inland watches and warnings that will be posted on that cone graphic. That doesn't necessarily apply to St. Mary because you're not an inland parish, but somebody like Lafayette, or over towards like Evangeline and some of those places, this is going to be very useful for those folks. So this is going to be implemented, I believe it's August 15th is when that'll officially come out. And again, it's just not going to be for the coastal parishes and counties, it'll be for the inland parishes and counties as well. The cone we talked about will not be perfect, but we continue to improve each year, and you can see the differences in how the cone has shrank over time. 2005, that purple area was the cone, and now it's the red area in 2020. So we'll continue to improve. That'll shrink again, probably by 2030, as the modeling and artificial intelligence, we're starting to utilize that as well. I think that's going to make a big difference in hurricane forecasting into the future. All right, so this is a very important slide. We get something in the Gulf, and we need to start doing briefings. Something's heading this way. This cycle is going to happen 4 times a day, especially as the situation gets serious. And so the Hurricane Center, they'll begin their analysis, basically. They'll start to look at microwave satellite imagery and all kinds of observation systems that they can look at when it comes to analyzing a tropical cyclone. They'll run their modeling, so the 1,000 models that I just showed you all, they'll start that process by about 8 o'clock, 7:45. Then by about 9 a.m., they'll have an official forecast track that's internally finalized. Once that's finalized, we'll collaborate that with the local offices. So for you all, it'll be us, Lake Charles. There's also another office in Slidell, Louisiana. And that's when we'll have our internal collaboration with them on a call. And we'll talk about any adjustments that we want them to make or any adjustments that they may want to make to that. They'll talk about things like rapid intensification, the chances of that happening. And those are the types of details that I want to relay to our elected officials and our emergency management directors during that call. And so speaking of that call, that'll happen at about 10:15. Our emergency management directors have made it very clear they do not want any other partner groups in that. They don't want media in it or anything like that. So that initial briefing out to our partners is going to happen with the emergency management directors and whoever they invite into their office. And then also our elected officials will be invited to that call. So it's going to be kind of a tight call. They want to feel like they can talk about decision making and things like that without anybody else being in there. And then by 10:45, all of our partner groups, school districts, DOT, and all those personnel, that call will happen at about 10:45, and that'll be a much larger call. Media will be invited into that call as well, because we serve our television stations and their meteorologists. And so one thing I want to remind everyone, our government partners, our school districts, our health, EMS, I know Acadia is in here. You all have access and you are invited to register to our Slack channel. I've got a URL up there that you can register on. This is tremendous. This service is it's just groundbreaking. We started this about the middle of June last year, and we are able to connect with our communities 24/7 utilizing this Slack channel. We have about 800 people in this, 800 of our government partners in this, our school districts, our superintendents, And we share messaging, graphics, expectations. During our tornado outbreak last week, we were able to get in there and talk about the environment and the short-term expectations of a potential tornado outbreak across southwest Louisiana. We were outlining the areas. We were showing the storms as they were coming in from southeast Texas. And this is a system that allows our 911 centers to be ready and understand what's coming at them. So if you're not signed up for Slack, and you're a government partner, healthcare, EMS, school district, you're more than invited, more than welcome to register for that Slack channel. And again, that's a very important service and allows us to stay connected. And finally, I want to end it with this. Acapulco, Mexico last year. We need to consider rapid intensification. We're starting to see a higher frequency of this phenomena occurring. And in this situation, this storm went from a tropical storm to a Category 4-hour period. So that resulted in 58 individuals still remain unaccounted for. So the National Hurricane Center, they've got an index that they run. It's basically an equation of a lot of different environmental factors, and that tries to give them a signal if rapid intensification is possible, but there's still a lot that we don't understand about this process. So something to consider when we do have storms out in the Gulf. Is there any questions? That's pretty much where I want to end it. I don't want to go too long here.
Doug, during the day, when we do have hurricane meetings or whatever, how often do you have a conference call with the parishes?
I want to say something. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, just one thing. So, everybody had this problem whenever the last hurricane hit us. We lost the radios. Zero communication, no phones. Only thing we had was, I call them a puck, I don't know what the police call it, Verizon. Hotspots work great, but we don't have a handful. Since then, we went back to the old school. We went back and we resurrected the analog radios, right? Fire department was okay, I believe, because they will run VHF, okay? But we have repeaters now, so I'm just warning everybody else, because if this happens to you, the AT&T One Net, whatever, didn't work, nothing worked. So we were dead in the water. We had to put extra people in the vehicles because you can't patrol by yourself. If you want to know what we're using, I'm sure our police department right here will be more than happy to tell you what we're using, but it was horrible. It was really bad. And we had zero communication for days, and it was pretty bad. That's all, I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Also, we have from Senator Kennedy's office who has come in, Ms. Sarah Dake. Did you have anything you wanted to say, Sarah?
I just wanted to thank you guys so much for hosting this meeting. We look forward to it every year, and thank y'all for all the hard work that every single one of you guys do to keep us informed and, first on the scene, basically. So we want to be a help to you guys. Hopefully we don't need to help y'all this season. I mean, personally, I planned a wedding during hurricane season this year, so I'm crossing my fingers that nothing happens. But yeah, very smart on my part. But thank y'all so much. I really appreciate it.
We all want to see that wedding happen. Lee Turner. Lee Turner, I didn't ask you if you wanted to say something earlier.
She said it all.
Okay. And then I have one more person who is here representing Congressman Clay Higgins. That's Tyrone Glover, who has a very short statement to read.
If you don't mind, I'll say from it. Good morning. I'm sorry for being late. Following the GPS, it took me somewhere else. But Congressman Higgins sends his love and respect. He's sorry he couldn't be here today because he's acting as prosecutor in the August securing our border situation today in the Senate. So that's all I have to say. Love and respect. He can call it for me. And hello to my counterparts.
All right, thank you, sir, and thank you to the congressman. Tim Osborne is now going to come up. He's been here for a long time coming to these meetings, so he knows exactly what information y'all need. Plus, he's going to have some stories to tell.
I wanted to also thank the congressional delegation. All the meetings that Doug Kramer and I've been in, and also in their time and effort to come to the weather forecast office just in the last couple months to actually learn more about the weather service and how we're forecasting and doing storms and navigation response has been terrific. In fact, Lee actually had a great time launching a balloon with Woody and with Elizabeth from the congressional offices. And that's the day-to-day of the support. And I want to really encourage you to get to know more about your weather forecast office and how it's important. This picture is very significant in terms of the preparedness portion of this. When we first started these meetings, the Port of Morgan City was living in a building that I'm not even sure would have survived any hurricane at all. And we were actually holding the meetings in the auditorium across the parking lot. And it was the efforts of the port and the parish pushing and pushing and pushing to be creating a storm resilient building that we're in today because of the Port of Morgan City. And it's just not a port building, but you can see it in all the partners that are using this building and how it's important it has after Ida in terms of serving as a command center. So I want to really commend that part of the preparedness and say that this is the kind of coordination that we have that's probably the best we've ever seen in the state of Louisiana, coming together with the expertise, the experience, and getting refreshed with every year. The 2023 season was a El Nino season, so as you can imagine, everyone's like relaxing, not a problem, very few storms. We don't have to be on the edge of our seat in terms of being ready. And yet, as you see with 2023, how active it is even during an El Nino. And in fact, we activated and responded to Idalia, which came up the Gulf Coast of Florida and made landfall in and around the Cedar Key area. And again, they had flooding in Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg, all the way up the coast with significant storm damage in the Big Bend of Florida. We've had 8 consecutive years of a Category 4 or a Category 5 hurricane making landfall somewhere in the Gulf Coast. 8 straight years. So the forums like this are so important in terms of the 3 most important tenets of everything. Preparedness, which we're doing right now, responding, and recovery. Those are your 3 major points. Everything else falls within those 3 categories. And what Doug is talking about in terms of preparedness is the realization years ago, we had presentations talking about 96 hours out from the landfall of this hurricane, we're going to do the following things. As we saw with Ida, and as we saw with Hurricane Michael that hit Bay County, Florida, as we saw with Hurricane Harvey, as we saw with Otto, your preparedness window now is getting narrowed down to 24 hours. 24 hours between a nothing, maybe tropical storm, and a Category 5 or Category 5 making landfall in that short a period of time. Michael was, in my mind, Michael was the contemporary storm that drove that home. In terms of 24 hours out, it really was nothing. And in fact, it built to a 5 and actually was still building as it made landfall across Tyndall Air Force Base in Mexico Beach. The things that I'd like to talk about is preparedness, and this is the most important thing. Every one of you needs to look at what is going to be needed after the storm in terms of your response. How much do you have in terms of imagery and accountability and documentation about your current facilities? How many vessels at dock any given day? How much imagery do you have showing your facilities right now, pre-hurricane season? We have, and in fact, if Tori and Cindy share the presentations, which I think they will, we have a lot of imagery, public imagery, 1-foot resolution on the coast. Now, it doesn't cover much in Morgan City, But then again, the state and other partners actually may have that imagery that you document, you bring in, you save, put it on the thumb drives, put it on multiple drives. Because what happens after that storm goes by and FEMA shows up? You have to document. You have to document. You have to actually prove that there was a storm and here's the damage. This goes to sheriff's offices, police departments. It goes to port facilities. It goes to mayors in terms of documenting the overall damage to their communities. And as a advocate, I'd like to say, not only is communications a problem, it's been a problem for years. And I just don't know what it is. The French Quarter Festival that has just been held, and I was at with my daughter who lives in New Orleans last year, had a huge AT&T portable cell phone tower that they set up for the French Quarter Festival to provide additional cell phone service for all the people having a fun time. And I'm taking pictures and looking at this, and I'm asking, why hasn't this shown up in Morgan City, or in Houma, or in Lockport, or in Raceland after all these hurricanes? Where are the cell phone services that we all depend upon when we see things failing, when we see the radio systems that were touted to be absolutely, critical for response activities and recovery, and we don't have those services? So I'd like to say that not only do we understand it, we've lived it, and we're just at a point now is to really say this is something you should be pushing a lot through Congress, you name it, of what do we do to get communications in. As sheriffs and other emergency responders know, lack of communication is absolutely horrific. Look at the people that need medical attention. Look at the people that have insulin requirements. Look at the people, my own brother passed away, rest in peace, that needed 24-hour electrical services for oxygen, air conditioning, refrigeration for medications. We had people committing suicide because they were out of touch with their family or support groups to try to keep them stable and supported. And that's one of the things that I just want to bring up to you in terms of looking at what we need to do to prepare. Imagery is important to document. Pre and post hurricane, we will go ahead and fly in here and take imagery across all the impacted areas. You have the ability. Entergy was one of the things that was really important with Hurricane Ida in terms of looking at the Entergy power lines coming back into South Lafourche, Grand Isle, South Terrebonne Parish. So what did we have to do? We added more flight lines to the Entergy power corridor to look at where all the towers had collapsed or had gone down. The same thing with Laura over on the southwest Louisiana side, where we had an entire tower and high lines collapsed into the GIWW. No one saw it until we went and got the imagery, and then they were able to affect it. And then Energy in Florida. Again, everything that we take, you can download, you can use, you can have for all your FEMA requests and everything to document pre and post. Hurricane Ian the year before was so bad that in a lot of ways that imagery was actually able to really help people like Lee County of understanding where do I have functional roads? Where do I have facilities that actually can be reopened? There are a lot of things that are just gone. We had entire homes and condominiums being deeply, deeply destroyed that block ways into areas. And we had people stranded because of lack of access. So if you look at the pre-imagery we have today, it gives you the opportunity to collect it, download it, and use it. Also, the other thing that I want to do is impress upon you preparedness. We have what we call a coastal inundation dashboard, which it goes active with every storm. So every water level station we have along the coast is depicted in one place. And so what I'd like to point out is not only do you know what weather forecast office you should be looking at, subscribing to Slack, looking at their web-based resources, and getting to know the forecasters, which you are doing right now. But you should also look at your local water level stations and weather stations and get to adopt it. I mean, where's the nearest weather station that I can actually start relying on? Berwick, right out here, has a weather station with a tide and water level station. It's a great place to start using and knowing, link, bookmarking it. So with a storm, what's the issue with storm surge? Flooding. Well, it depends. If you're at a 20-foot high, Ida was here, timing. Ian was a fast mover. It was coming up, it was going to go into Tampa Bay, and it ducked hooked, and it went right into Lee County, Florida. How many remember Ida? It crawled throughout the coast of Louisiana. And in fact, when I was talking to emergency managers on the North Shore of Slidell and everything, while I was down here in Homa, what did they say? We're fine. This looks good. No problems. This weather is really not a problem. What happened? 6 hours later, they got blown. I mean, it was that slow, and it was that devastating because of the length of time it went over those areas. And that's really one of the most important things in looking at this, is that water levels in and around the storm may not necessarily occur at the same time as sea landfall. You could actually see a push of water ahead of the storm. That's one of the things that we'd like to impress upon you. You may see storm surge, you may see flooding before landfall. And you may see that flooding in the case of some of the storms like Rita that may continue for another 24 to 36 hours after the storm event. So access into this and looking at this is very important. Doug talked about Hurricane Ike making a beeline. It never deviated, went right to Galveston. It flooded, and you remember Ike. It flooded every coastal parish and the North Shore of Louisiana from a storm that made landfall in Galveston, Texas. So the flooding events and the use of the coastal and dashboard is very, very important. And to understand that floods well away from the actual landfall event itself may occur, and it may be quite severe. Going back to post-storm water, peak water level maps, this is documentation, this is recovery. This is where you go to with the National Weather Service and the National Hurricane Center reports and use for documenting of your water levels, when it happened, where it happened, and then use your imagery after the storm and your documentation pre and post to essentially document the recovery and what you need to do to try to get funding either through insurance or through FEMA or through the SBA to affect as rapid a recovery as possible. And that's really one of the key things here. Looking at water levels along Ian, and in this case Adelia, this impresses the point like I just said. Where was the flooding? Where was the landfall of Adelia? It was on the west coast of Florida around Big Bend. What did we see on the east coast, Atlantic seaboard? We saw flooding. We saw heavy flooding rains. Why? Because storms like Adelia, just like Harvey, just like Laura, just like Ida, have very far-reaching effects, even well away. So if you're thinking that a Texas landfall of a hurricane is really nothing for you to worry about, you need to really work very closely with the Weather Forecast Office and the Hurricane Center and monitor to understand if that flood event is actually going to reach you. And that's one of the most important things. We get told all the time with a landfall of storm, it made landfall all the way over there. How could I have possibly been flooded from that event? And in the case of all these hurricanes, Ike was the great example. Ike almost took up the entire Gulf of Mexico. So the size of storm and the intensification, rapid intensification, are always one of the things. There's the old adage of the fact that you always plan for, well, I'm going to say the old adage now has been modified, always plan for 2 categories above what's being forecast. And that's really one of the most important things to talk about. This is the kind of work that we do, working in these areas. Every year in the last 10 years, we've had to manage and affect a navigational survey of waterways to reopen the ports. Ports are critical, not only to get relief supplies and cargo moving in and out of an area, but to also get the waterway available for cleanup, for removal of debris. Experience is everything. This is Ian, 2 years ago in the Naples-Fort Long Beach area. People in marinas full of these boats walked away thinking no problems. It's going to Tampa, it's going to St. Pete. We're not going to have a problem. They left a bow line and a stern line onto their boat, and this is what happened. So if you, in your experience and expertise and preparedness, the most important thing for us to remember, get boats removed, get vessels out of the way, go to storm moorings if necessary, listen to your captain of the port and the Coast Guard, and be aware that no vessel in the water is immune from being affected by a storm surge. We found a fully loaded rock barge in the Calcasieu Ship Channel just outside the pass after Delton that had broken away from a facility, Venture Global LNG, and it stopped ship traffic until we report to the Corps of Engineers. If you have a real problem in your waterway, in your facility, if you're missing things, that rock barge was owned by a company that didn't even know how many barges they had tied up at the Venture Global facility. They didn't know. I think we had 24 of them. And so accountability of how many vessels, what are missing, and then what we need to do to go find them. Those are the kind of things that are very important. And we're not immune to this. We almost ripped a hull and sank that boat that's in that picture in Port Fourchon with Hurricane Ida. Working in these waters and working in debris fields like this, we almost ran across a container, floating container just below the water. And we came that close to slicing the hull wide open and sinking the boat. So all of these are lessons that I'd like to impart, and all of these are things that I'd like to just say is with the work that we're doing, is we want to really always point out that even after the storm, we need to be very cognizant of the weather and the sea state, and we need the accountability and the coordination with the local ports, Coast Guard, Corps of Engineers, and you to effect a quick recovery. When we have to go in and we have to survey waterways, it takes time. If we know that storm wasn't significant, and if we know that no one's reporting lost vessels or any facilities that have broken apart like a dock into the waterway, that helps. That helps a Coast Guard, that helps the Corps of Engineers, that helps the local port to say that I think we're ready to reopen. And we're as supportive of that as anything else. I'd like to just thank everyone for always being here 12 years in a row. And I think that what we'd like to point out to you again is the fact that the partnership between us and you is probably the best we can ever hope and ever see across the coast. And we want to thank every one of you for being here and being part of this effort. Thanks again.
Okay, now it's my turn, right? That's it. Oh, there we go. Okay, declarations. I'm sure you've all seen this slide before. The parish president can make a declaration for the parish, the mayors for the city, the tribal chief for the tribe, and the governor for the state. But the one we mostly need is the president's declaration to be able to get our funds back, right? Our Emergency Operations Center, that's where we hold our meetings with the mayors and elected officials at either in Franklin or over here. And we'll discuss with the Weather Service what actions we should take as far as evacuations or what steps in preparedness we need to do. And after all the meetings that we have, we'll send notes out to the press, emails and stuff like that, and we'll email your agencies about what we talked about and what we plan on doing. I'm sure you have all had the emails come into your office after we have these meetings and everything. Then you can get with your own agency people and tell them what the plan is to be. Okay, now we're doing pre-storm, like Tim had mentioned. We need to check all our generators, fuel, batteries, all our equipment, get our sandbags ready, sandbag machine, or get sand trucked in to the locations where we're gonna fill sandbags. All our drainage and sewer lines, the motors, make sure that we have the right generators and everything to use to hook up to our sewer transfer plants and all that. Also, prepare your staff, your families and everything. Prepare them to get ready for evacuation if you're going to stay and maintain emergency operations in the parish. You want to make sure that things are not going to get blown away from your yard. You've always seen the trampolines and the power lines. Okay, it's time to take those down when something happens. And I'm sure the levy district will take care of looking at the water situations with the levees and all that. Tim was also mentioning about documentations. The yellow highlighted section here is the most important thing that we need to do as far as documenting. Take pictures, have invoices of your equipment, inventories. It's time to take inventory of everything that you have in your agencies, write it down, have a list, put it on the computer. Have another set of that list at City Hall, or somebody, appoint a document custodian in your agency. That's the person that's going to take all the information, the inventory list, your pictures, and file those and keep them on hand. Because that's where FEMA's going to need to go to see that person to get documentation of any damage so that you can collect reimbursements. Tide and storm predictions, that's going to be the levy district. Mike and I usually get together and we discuss all this. And you can even see from Cibolo Point, Burns Point, Morgan City, how the storm comes in and goes out, whatever. They get a game plan. That's something that's been preached from the levy, from the state of Louisiana and GOSEP about getting the game plan together. 2 items of importance would be your medical needs for your people that's homebound or whatever, or that's on oxygen or O2 generators. They need to tell their vendors that supplies them oxygen to bring some extra bottles before a hurricane happens. Have those extra bottles at your house ready to go with you. Okay? The O2 generators, you have to have electricity to run those, right? So they make these little boxes called power boxes or whatever that you can sell that are sold. You can buy one of those and it lasts 6 hours or whatever to run a generator, an oxygen concentrator. And you can get those recharged. We talked to the fire departments about putting an extension cord outside, running that generator so people can come and plug in. We've also talked to fire departments, Franklin and Morgan City, oxygen exchange bottles. We may be able to get some before a big storm that comes, maybe not. So the main thing is for the vendor that has oxygen tanks to bring extra tanks to you people. Okay, this one, bottom part in yellow is the family emergency plan. Okay, I got a cousin up in Monroe, so all of my family has their phone numbers. Okay, that's down here. Whatever plans we got, we call them, the cousin in Monroe, give them information. If we get stuck on the highway, we call them and let them know where we are. That way, that person will know where everybody's at, so you call them for information, where's Susan at or whatever, and she'll be able to tell you if she just called, whatever. So that's the definition of what this is. It's a communications plan. Okay, see the picture on the right? We were in that this morning, right, Al? I mean, we had traffic backed up 3 or 4 miles this morning, and we were stuck in it, but it finally got moving. But during a hurricane evacuation, it's gonna barely move. So the main thing we need to do with this is leave early, okay? Key facts, leave early, be patient, stock your car up with drinks and food along the way. Your medicines and all that, have with you chargers and all that. Message boards are gonna be put out. Now, John and them had a meeting, the sheriff's office and DOTD yesterday, and we talked about hurricane evacuations, road construction, and how that's gonna affect everything. It's a problem, we can't get out of it. But we trying to resolve problems and look at future problems that we might have. Okay, this is just a little, they have construction sites in Iberia Parish and same area. Down to single lane, it's the start. These are our main evacuation routes, highlighted in yellow to the right. It's from Morgan City if they want to go north or east, depending on which way the storm's coming, right? And then we got the green highlighted section. That's for our secondary roads that we can take, and your primary is going to be the yellow. But we have to notice that New Iberia area, you can't get off right there, so you have to take an exit in advance if you want to go to Abbeville. Okay? And a lot of people's going to have to take the LA 182 to 31, say Martinville. So traffic is going to get backed up. This is 6 miles long. It's going to be between Baldwin and Sorrel. That's what it's going to look like. The part in New Iberia is 3 miles long. This one's going to be 6. Oh, and by the way, it's going to be single lane, but your access service roads are going to be open. So we can use that to get extra traffic flowing. This here in the blue, dark and shaded area is what's going to be in Baldwin coming up. It's going to be single lane both ways. Once you get to 3211 in Franklin, you're going to have a traffic jam. Well, if there's a traffic jam, you'll be able to exit there, take 182 and go on from there. And you can get back on the service roads after you get through Baldwin or whatever. You see, get on service road. So that's an option. That's the only options that we'll have. And then next year, they're going to start building an overpass over the railroad tracks on Highway 90 by Pine2 Sugarville. They're going to put an overpass over the railroad tracks that go through there. So that's going to be a 4-year construction project. That's going to hinder all our traffic also. And then year after that, they're going to do the swamp area from Calumet to Centerville and relay that road. That's going to be another project. So one guy told me it's going to be like 10 years of projects going on, coming up. This is an alternate route for the New Iberia section at Blue if you wanted to go to Abbeville. That's the only way to get there, off of that area. Okay, this is our guides for parish group. Identified pod sites. That's where we have distribution points. This is after the storm. Morgan City, we decided on the auditorium parking lot, and then Franklin Hospital Avenue. And that's where we would drop off food and water and be distributed from there. Identified debris sites to be on the Chittamauga Trail in Sharonton and the landfill. Commodities on hand that I have is water, MREs, and tarps. I have a limited supply. I'm going to get some more water so we can try and issue a pallet of water out to the police and fire before the storm. Okay, pallet of water. But you can get your own, just in case I can't get it to you. All right, distribution points to the little subdivisions or little communities that we have. I'm not calling Patterson little. Okay, but the main pod sites, these communities will be able to go to main pod sites pick up water in MREs and bring them back to a distribution point in your area. This is because the National Guard cannot be spread out down all over the place, you know. They have a big site, and then the communities can come there, pick up, and bring back the issue out to their citizens. Contracts, we have pre-positioned debris contracts, shelter contract, feeding will be with the caterer, that's on state contract. The generators, we won't be able to get those pre-positioned or anything like that, but that's all on state contract with GOSA. The shelters, our plan is to go to Alexandria at the Rapides Coliseum. And we're going to use local school buses from the school board to transport citizens to the shelter. We have Franklin High and Market City Junior High as a bus loading area. So there'll be buses in Market City and Franklin. And we'll need help from the fire departments, police department, city administration in both of those communities to assist in loading the people onto the buses and getting them where they need to go. We'll try and have water and MREs to put on each bus before they depart. The nursing homes, that's a separate entity from us, but the fire departments need to assist them. They usually do in loading their patients out if there's a need for evacuation. Fire departments need to know to do that. Nursing homes, they are on their own when they leave our facilities or whatever, and they go to their sister facilities and other locations. That's a picture of a shelter. Okay. Post-storm, okay, you need to make initial assessments on the damages or whatever. Law enforcement, city fire, take photos, list the damages, buildings, streets messed up or whatever, trees across the road, whatever's going to cost us to help get the town back together. All reports need to be damage and photos and all that need to be brought over to your custodian, like I said, and get those turned in. Okay, this is a icon that you can take. It's for reporting individual damage at residences, in our communities, whatever. If you got a rural house that's damaged or whatever, you can do that, and you can, the police or fire can register for people just doing that to get the damage all in. Post-storms, yeah, cell phones might not work and whatever. We all know that part, the mayor mentioned that. But all of this needs to be up and running before we can tell people in the evacuation shelter that they can come back. It's no use having them come back if you don't have toilets working, plumbing, water, food, nothing, no grocery stores, no electricity. All that needs to be up and running. Okay. Now, I do want to mention something. I have little brochures here on generator safety. This here tells you all about where you put your generator, what you do with it to be safe from carbon monoxide, right? Okay, because we always have to storm. Hundreds of people have died from this incident before. Mike, you're up. Mike here is with the Seminary Parish Levy District, Mike Picata, and he is going to talk to you about everything in water.
Good morning. One thing I want to touch on before we start this is something you mentioned for all agencies. If you are looking to get reimbursed at the end of the day after these emergencies, make sure you are documenting, taking pictures, and you keep all of that. I know we still have, Tim, what's the one we just got something on?
This month, one on 2019, I guess.
Yeah, so we're still dealing with FEMA from 2019. And keep it together, make sure you got everything in order, because they're gonna do everything they can to not pay you for the stuff that you did. So, keep that in mind. Another thing on the communications, I know the levy district purchased 2 sat phones after Hurricane Ida. We don't have them turned on at this point, but we have them in the office. In the event we need them, we can get them turned on relatively easy. So it's, because we thought we were covered, we had the radios, we had cell phones, we had house phones, and none of it worked, so. This is our levy district base map. You can see we are fortunate here in St. Mary because we have a federal system that is actually tied to the river. It's a riverine system, but we use it for both the river and storm surge. We have been fortunate enough over the past 10 years or so to pretty much close up almost every loop that tied into the federal system. Of course, the Berwick-Patterson area has a ring levy. Within the next month or so, the only opening in the Morgan City area will be on the lakefront. We have a project starting very soon that is going to close the LA-70 canal plug. So that'll tie in the LA-70 levee with the new levees near the pump station. And then going out west, we've actually closed the entire loop from the Wax Lake outlet to the Sherrington Canal to an elevation of 10.5. While some of the federal levees are a bit lower, 10.5 is the elevation we've built all the new stuff. This is just some of the stuff about the levy district. One thing I want to point out is that historic crest at Morgan City on 7/13/2019, that was Hurricane Barry. We had a high river and a storm, a hurricane at the same time. I'm not sure that's the correct number, that 10.06, that's what's in the record books, but I think we saw more around the 10.5 number. And then this is just a map we always show, just so that you understand. Everything in the pink, 30% of it plus the Red River flows through Morgan City. So keep that in mind. Here, and I'm just going to run through real quick. These are a lot of the flood control structures that we have throughout the parish. It's the Bayou Teche structure that's on the Sherrington Canal. It blocks everything east of Sherrington Canal from storm surge. This was completed, I believe, 2 years ago. Then this is a more recent one. This is over at Meadow Shark. This was after probably Hurricane Barry or Laura or Delta. Near Meadow Shark and Gulfcraft, there's an opening right there that we had not finished. The federal system basically died out just south of Meadow Shark. So we went in and installed this removable flood wall through their facilities. And that's not it. Try again. So pre-storm, we have a contractor that goes out and installs this. It's a total of about 800 feet of flood wall. It can be done roughly in a day and a half. So this doesn't affect their day-to-day operations, but when we need the protection inside of their facilities, this gets us there. The top elevation of that flood wall is 10.5 feet. So you can see it goes relatively quickly and easily. Everything's stored on each of the sites. You can kick it back. I think they get the idea. And then one of our older structures, the Franklin Canal Floodgate Pump Station. This has been used many times already in the past 10 years or so, and it's roughly about 10 years old as well. Hanson Canal, again after Hurricane Ike and Reed, I believe. This was a conduit that flooded Highway 90, which prevented a lot of traffic in and out of the areas after the storm. So we had, have that blocked off. And then the Yellow Bayou, again, another conduit to Highway 90, has a pump station and the 2 sluice gates. And then Morgan City backwater protection has been improved over the last 6 or 8 years. Again, we have 2 areas that need to be plugged up. Let me see if I can, it's not going to show. You can see where it says discharge canal at the top. The tie-in between that LA 70 levee and the Hellenic lakefront, there's still that opening in that canal. So here in the next couple weeks, we're putting a rush on it to get it closed up. And then the only other opening we have currently is in front of Lakeside Subdivision. So again, that loop is almost completely done. We have another section down here, number 7, to tie the federal levee into the railroad tracks to complete the entire loop around Morgan City. We're looking to go to design on that pretty soon as well. And then, of course, Bayou Chene floodgate is not necessarily a storm surge gate. It can be utilized with the right storm. Don't mean that any storm's right, but anything basically to the west of the Atchafalaya River, we could use a Bayou Chene floodgate to help it storm surge into the Amelia areas and going north. There's a picture of that. And then this is just a close-up view again. This is the west end of the parish. Here's a Wax Lake outlet. We close this entire loop all the way up to the 10.5-foot ridge. I think that P19 is probably the Bayou Teche structure. So everything's tied in there. And then, of course, Morgan City Berwick area. I'm sorry, Patterson Berwick area, and then the Morgan City area. And that's all I got, unless y'all got any questions. Again, we start closing gates as soon as we see there's a threat. There is some time involved in getting all of these things done, so we do it early. We give people the chance to get vessels and equipment inside of the protection, but we need to get them closed early.
Yeah, levy districts. Yeah.
I'm going to come up first.
No question?
Thank you. Okay, so we have Tim Cannell, who is our operations manager for the Atchafalaya River, Bayous Above Black and Chene. And Tim doesn't have a presentation, but I asked him to come up so he could answer any questions and just kind of let you know what the interaction is with the Corps before an event like a hurricane, during, and then during the recovery. And so, you want to come up?
I will come up since you mentioned my name. Yeah, so Tim Cannell, as Cindy said, you know, we're kind of in a support role in these events. We have our lock master here, LaDon Champagne. I don't know if Billy Vaillant is in the room also. There he is in the back. You know, we sit, when these things are going to occur, we are in on all the meetings. We are listening. We are participating with regards to what needs to be done. Our primary focus for us is dealing with the navigation industry. And like I said, we're in support of the other people who call on us and say that they have some need. But during these events, what typically happens is the local entities are the ones that actually do what needs to be done, and we're sitting there waiting to hear if we need to do anything in particular. So that's all I have to say. I don't have a presentation because there's, unlike, you know, the EOC and the different entities that are directly involved here with that, we don't. So anyway, any questions that I can answer, let me have them. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you very much. All right, Cindy.
Thank you, Tim. Janelle Pichet is going to speak on behalf of the Coast Guard. And she's just got a brief presentation, and I'm going to ask if you would introduce some of your folks, maybe have them stand and make an introduction.
Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we can do the introductions at the end. I have a contact slide, so we can go over that at the very end. So Thank you, Cindy, for the introduction. I am Lieutenant Janelle Pichet. I am the Waterways Management Division Chief here at Marine Safety Unit Morgan City. And my division is very diverse. We do inspections on waterfront facilities, we do pollution response, we do port state control inspections, and then we do waterways and risk management. We also have FAA drone pilots within the division, and we are all qualified in multiple ICS positions. So we wear a lot of different hats. So I'm here to talk to you this morning in regards to what are the decisions that the Coast Guard is going to make as a hurricane is approaching. So we're going to go through a series of port conditions. And these port conditions are decided on by using the Hurricane Center's official forecast of the hurricane force wind models that Mr. Doug Kramer showed us early this morning. So port conditions, Whiskey, X-ray, Yankee, and Zulu. So when we're in port condition Whiskey, that means that hurricane force winds, they're 72 hours out, and X-ray is when those winds are 48 hours out from hitting land. And generally with the port, the port is still open, and vessels are able to use that time to seek safe refuge. When we get into port condition Yankee, that's when we'll start putting restrictions on vessel movement within the port. And then once we get to Zulu, when hurricane winds are 12 hours from hitting landfall, that's when we're going to have the port conditions going to be closed. When we move into the port condition recovery, that's when the port will be reopened either in phases or it'll be reopened with restrictions depending on the damage. So our priorities, like I mentioned, we're going to implement those port conditions, X-ray, Yankee, Zulu, in regards to the timing of the winds. How are you going to know what port condition we're in? We're going to put out marine safety information bulletins. Those are posted on our public-facing website called Homeport. We'll show you that on the final slide. There's a really great dashboard that is there. It's all color coordinated on port statuses. So it's either going to have a red, yellow, or green bubble. So red is going to be closed, yellow is going to mean the port is opened with restrictions, green is open. How else you're going to know about these port conditions? We're going to have harbor patrols. My team is going to be going out and they're actually going to be visiting vessel areas, fleeting areas, shipyards. They're going to be going and talking to our waterfront facilities. They're going to be asking, hey, is this vessel, are the lines doubled up? The facility infrastructure, is it secure? Are things tied down? Are the containment areas clean and clear? And then also, if you have any other questions, I encourage you to contact us. 100%, we are here to serve you. Moving on to our vessel traffic service, Berwick Bay. So they're going to follow the port conditions mentioned earlier, and the vessels should make plans to reach safe harbor prior to that Zulu condition, right? So some of the factors that play into that is we have the BNSF railroad bridge. They'll lower at their predetermined wind thresholds, which are usually 30 knots of sustained wind or gusts over 35 knots. And then of course we work alongside the locks. Those closures are determined by the Army Corps, and that will also factor into the determination to allow last-minute vessel movement seeking safe harbor. So I've mentioned that a few times now, safe harbor, right? So Berwick Bay is not considered a safe refuge point. So in the event of a tropical storm or a hurricane, Vessel Traffic Service Berwick Bay, they're going to start clearing out that vessel traffic service area. They're going to direct vessels on these routes. So that's going to be north of the Atchafalaya River to Krotz Springs, or north along the Port Allen route past Bayou Sorel Lock. And then we also have east or west on the Gulf Intracoastal Waterway, past the Bayou Buff Lock, or past the Wax Lake Outlet. So for our reconstitution priorities, of course, #1 priority, search and rescue, safety of human life. We're going to partner with our stakeholders. We have the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Sheriff's Department. We have great working relationships. So of course we'll partner with them. And then we have the supportive assets from Air Station and Sector New Orleans that we can call upon. But for our port assessment, right, we want to get the port back up and running as quickly and as safely as possible. So how we're going to do that is we're going to do navigational channel surveys. Is the navigational channel clear of debris? Is there any power lines that are down? What are the air drafts like? That's what we're looking for. So VTS, they're not going to reopen Berwick Bay until all of these channel surveys are completed. So we're going to partner with our Aids to Navigation team. So they're going to be out there, they're going to be checking the ATON. They're going to be checking to make sure that they're still watching properly. They're going to make sure that the critical ones are still in place for safe navigation. They're also going to be identifying any kind of obstructions or hazards within the waterway, and they'll be able to mark it for mariners. We also have a partnership with GICA, which is the Gulf Intercoastal Association. They can provide a survey team to help review portions of the GIWW. And of course, we have our friends at the Army Corps of Engineers, and they can provide side scan sonar vessels that can help do channel surveys below the waterline. And then, of course, we're going to work with our locks and bridges. Is everything safe? Are those open so that we can start allowing vessel traffic inbound and outbound? And again, I mentioned my team is going to be out there doing our harbor safety patrols to identify any pollution response or any kind of facilities issues. So all of these are factors that are going to go into discussion before opening up the port for safe navigation. So this is my final slide. I encourage you to take a picture of it. So this is kind of the Morgan City leadership. We have Commander Mary Gilday. She's unable to visit with us this morning, but we have Lieutenant Commander Matthew Meekum. If you can stand up, please, sir. He is our executive officer of MSU Morgan City. They're in the back corner over here. Then we also have Lieutenant Commander Haley Gibson. She's our Chief of Prevention. She's going to be leaving us, unfortunately, this summer. That's why her name is in red. So we'll have a replacement sometime this summer. We have Mr. Tim Spence. He's our VTS Berwick Bay supervisor. And we also have with us Senior Chief Malto. She's up here in the front. Myself, and then we also have in the back our ATON team. We have Senior Chief Gabriel Boseman. He is the officer in charge for the U.S. Coast Guard, or ACTS. And then we have Chief Gabriel Manfugas. He is from the ANT Morgan City. So thank you all for attending. And then on the bottom here, we have our contacts. Again, please take a photo of this. If you have any waterways issues, that top phone number, that goes to me. These are all 24/7 phone numbers, so feel free to call us at any time during the week. MSU Morgan City Pollution and Facility Duty phone. If you have any issues with obviously pollution response or any concerns of waterfront facilities. VTS, please call them if you have any vessel traffic issues. And then we have a Sector Command Center for any search and rescue. And then if you have any other questions that you think are super strange or you don't know who to call, just call our officer of the day. They'll be able to help you out. And then that home port on the very bottom, that link is where you can go to see all of our MSIBs or our port conditions. So thank you very much for your attention. Please, feel free to come up to anybody who's wearing a blue suit today, ask us any of your questions. We're here to serve you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Also, we have with us from St. Mary Parish Sheriff's Office, the Chief Deputy, Mr. John Call.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'll be brief as I recognize that I'm the only thing between y'all and lunch.
No, I am actually.
Then I'm going to be long. How about that? Yep, it's all Cindy's fault. So first of all, I'd like to say, unfortunately, Sheriff Driscoll couldn't make it today. He got called to a meeting for the Louisiana Sheriff Association in Baton Rouge, and he sends his regrets. We've committed ourselves at the Sheriff's Office in the last several years of upgrading our response capabilities and our assets. Some of these assets that we've come into ownership of over the last several years is high water vehicles. We saw repeatedly, every time we had flooding situations, we had to wait for outside assets to come in before we could perform rescues. So we took it upon ourselves to go and acquire a high water vehicle where we can now perform those rescues without waiting for outside assistance. We've just upgraded our drone capabilities to include FLIR systems for search and rescue. One of the most significant upgrades that we've done is our radio system. And it's been mentioned a number of times as the Ida, how the radio system failed, radio, telephones. So from one side of the parish, for y'all that don't know, half the parish went black, went dark, right? So we couldn't communicate from the west side of the parish to the east side of the parish. Any unit that we had on the east side of the parish, we couldn't call them on the radio, we couldn't call them on a cell phone. We had no communication. We were relegated to, hey, go here, find this person and tell them this. And that was a disaster because those messages as they got passed really didn't properly relay orders. It was like that game in uniquely helpful, right? At this time, the story changes. And so we found that they are communicating. The I had passed, and so we had a series of meetings with first responders and went to our providers of our radio systems and said, hey, what do we need to do to where this will never happen again? So come to find out, money solves a lot of problems. And so after a substantial investment, we were able to upgrade our radio systems to where now if a tower goes down, we can switch towers, right? So we can jump towers, continue communicating, continue be able to broadcast. We also upgrade our redundancy systems. So even if those go down, we have UHF and VHF radio system capabilities to where we could continue communicating rail car to car. So we put a big emphasis on maintaining operational abilities, and communication was absolutely the most important issue that we had to look into. Things like bulk fuel, we supply we get a supply of bulk fuel as we know a storm is possibly coming, where we have a mobile bulk fuel capabilities as well as stationary on site on the other side of the parish. So we will station fuel on both sides so we can keep our cars running. We have armored vehicle now to where we can have a delayed, time out there in the field. It was a point in time where when the winds got to a certain speed, we had to come in off the road. Now we have some capabilities to where we have heavier vehicle where we can stay out there a little while longer. Jimmy had mentioned earlier that we had a meeting with DOTD, and I could probably summarize by saying it's going to be a nightmare. So, not to be too grim, but that's the facts of it, right? You have essentially from Franklin to New Iberia is going to go from single to double, single to double. So it actually causes a little bit more of an issue because if you think about it, you have a couple of merge points. And where do you get a lot of your congestion is where they're going to merge, right? So you got two lanes trying to go to one, and that happens a couple of times. That is going to cause some significant problems. We've seen in the past when we've had a mass evacuation, cars overheat, they break down, they run out of gas, they start trying to stop. Another issue that you're going to run into is a lot of those exits are going to be shut down and not available. As you go through New Iberia or Iberia Parish right now, there's several exits that are shut down due to the construction. So when those people are coming through and trying to evacuate, it's going to be sometimes difficult for them to stop for fuel or supplies. So preparation needs to be made ahead of time. Local and state leaders try to emphasize that as much as possible. But the one thing that we're trying to emphasize as much as possible is if there's any anticipation that there's going to be an evacuation, do it early. Do it as soon as possible. If you err on the side of caution, we're good with that because it is going to be a long time before we can move a lot of that traffic out of here. So we're going to continue to have additional meetings with DOTD and other assets to try to come up with all the best plans of how we can help facilitate any movement should it be necessary. And not only that, but if there is a critical incident or an emergency situation that we are capable of going out there and providing assistance to anybody who might need it. We feel like we've got a lot of resources. We stay in a state of readiness, but we enhance it a bit during this time of the year. We have a lot of veterans at our department now who's been through this several times. unfortunately. You know, we've got some experience and we've seen where our shortcomings are and where we really succeed, and we try to really to build on that. We're available. Anybody needs help, assistance, our assets and our resources, we offer them to everyone, as well as our personnel. So if anybody needs anything, our doors are always open, our phone's always on, and hopefully we'll have a quiet season. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Where's Mama? Before we end, I do have a statement that I was asked to read by Mr. Evan Boudreau, who is our Economic Development Director for the parish. But I wanted to just, from things that were said during the meeting, I wanted to make a couple of notices to you. First of all, if you have not signed in on your way out, please do. We always compare the sign-in list to our distribution list, and so if there's anybody new, we add you to the list for the next meeting that we're going to have. So make sure that you have signed in. The other thing is we recognized a lot of people, but there are so many more in here. We would have been doing introductions for the whole meeting, but I do want to recognize our police departments, our police chiefs, our sheriff department, fire department, Acadian Ambulance, some of our industry partners, and I'm sure that once again I have forgotten someone, but please know that we appreciate every one of you being here. You did ask about the presentations. Once Tori gets clearance for a couple of them, we will put those on our website. We're also going to share this Facebook video as soon as that's out. And Tim Osborne, I just want to tell you, you have been one of the greatest cheerleaders for the Port of Morgan City all these years. We very much appreciate you. You asked a while ago if anybody remembered Hurricane Ida. I do. I had a cat who was about to have babies. She had one female, and we named it Ida. So I'm going to read this statement, and then I'll have Jimmy close out. When people think of economic development, it's not normally in the same setting as disaster planning. Over the past 2 years, my office has developed an economic preparedness plan with buy-in from business and industry partners and community stakeholders. We are finalizing the official document that will be made available on the Economic Development Office's website, as well as through our social media channels and email newsletter. The purpose of this plan is to define and outline the specific action steps for economic recovery should a disaster occur. By having this plan in place before a disaster hits, will enable our parish-wide community to act more quickly and efficiently and spur the recovery process. Our economic preparedness plan is designed to work in conjunction with the parish's larger framework for disaster response. Once the finalized plan is released, my office will launch a parish-wide education campaign to educate our business community and residents on what they can expect should a disaster occur. I want to thank our congressional delegation for their participation in today's planning meeting, our state legislators, current and former, who are in the thick of the legislative session for their efforts in securing necessary funds for storm mitigation projects. Parish President Jones for prioritizing projects and investments that ensure St. Mary's resiliency. All of our collaboration, all of our local officials for their partnership and continued collaboration, and to the Port of Morgan City for spearheading this annual event. As always, please do not hesitate to reach out if I can be of any assistance. Thank you. Jimmy? That wasn't brief.
That was a lot. Okay, everybody, I want to thank you all for coming. Does anybody have any questions or any issues they want to raise before we all leave? All the police departments, fire departments are good? Tim, you had something?
Just want to remind everyone, you're talking about the DOTD and the highway thing. This is not an evacuation that's just going to see the local parishes leaving. This is an evacuation. You're going to see people all the way from Grand Isle coming up and onto the roadways, coming out of South Food Parish, because they know if they try to turn east to go through the New Orleans area, it's going to be a double nightmare. So the whole issue of listening and responding and moving fast to get evacuation out of this area is going to have to be kept in a consideration. You've got a whole bunch of people behind you that are going to try to fill that roadway. Last thing I'd like to point out, and I just as an encouragement, you got a lot of people that are going to come down here and try to grab their travel trailers, and they're going to try to grab their boats on the trailers, and they're trying to get on the highway. And you can imagine a camp owner that hasn't used that trailer in 10 years putting a boat on, and what's going to happen, put it up here in a parking lot, and leave themselves. You're going to see police and sheriffs dealing with an old motorhome or an old travel trailer or an old boat and trailer that's taken out an entire lane of traffic, and you have got to spend time and effort to get that cleared. So it's just something to think about. There's no, I don't know, any edict or any way you can enforce other than just encourage people to simply think, get it out of the water, get it away. And the last thing, and Doug, the mantra here is the three things: hide from the wind, hide from the wind, find that shelter, and it's not here. Secondly is run from the water. Never, never, never get stuck in a flood event where we can't get to you and you are getting stuck up in your upper floors, your attic. The last few years, you thought Katrina was the only thing that was going to happen. We've seen it again and again and again. And then the last thing is really to always stay in touch with what the sheriff and what the emergency manager in that area is telling you, and to respond to it. Listen, listen, listen. The last metric is it's unbelievable, is that you have to have a person convinced by listening to 2 or 3 different authorities to really believe it's time I got to get out of there. And how many of the first responders, like sheriff's office, sitting in command centers, like me, like Doug and others, get handed that phone? Oh, it's a mom with her 3 kids, and she just decided to leave. Calls in the middle of the storm. A woman had to take shelter inside her dryer, inside the dryer of her laundry room. They couldn't take it anymore. They went out, they jimmied open a school bus, and in the middle of Ida, they rescued 45 people out of South Lafourche Parish. You never want to see that happen. You never want to see a fireman or an EMS die for trying to rescue something in the middle of a storm that, should have been people that should have been gone. That's why these meetings are so important, and that's why everything you're doing is absolutely heroic, because it really saves lives when it occurs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. John?
Just to emphasize on what Tim was saying with the traffic issues, we had an accident on Highway 90 earlier this week with 3 18-wheelers, and the tow trucks had to back up
All the way
the distance.
to get to them.
It presents a very unique problem because you have from 83 to 318 where there's no entrance onto the highway. So if any accident, any stalled vehicle, any issue, we have to shut down the highway and basically back up a tow truck. I think it took a couple hours for the trucks to back up.
Yeah, you got to back up 6 miles on a
Exactly, so you're looking
single
at
lane.
like 6 to 7 miles where there's no other entrances on the highway. So anything that occurs right there is going to be an extended amount of time before we can rectify it.
Okay. Chief Martin?
Yeah, what we occurred with Ida was about 18 hours of traffic that was gridlocked, everybody trying to evacuate. I would like to see us, all the agencies that's involved with 90, be involved in a plan with DOTD, to figure out what would be a good time to start calling for evacuation, and we take it serious, at least for the next couple of years, because we know already with how long it takes to evacuate with good roadways, and we talking about Highway 182 bridge now closed for the next couple of years, and then all the other stuff. But I think us as leaders need to get together and figure out at what point in time the landfall's coming, that we're gonna call for an evacuation.
Yes.
And we take
You got to do it early.
Yes, sir.
That's the main thing, and the mayors and the elected officials need to really get all the information that you give to them so that they can get backed up to 3211 on Highway 90. You got to start detouring traffic on Northwest Boulevard to State 182. Well, that's true, yeah. That'll alleviate some of the traffic for us. You can still have the roads blocked by the time we get it on the road, if it's a bad storm coming our way.
This was days after the storm, and
Hospitals make out
Hospitals and EMS providers with ham radios.
ham radios.
They do require a ham operator outside of an emergency. Bring it to Baton Rouge General, they'll know what to do. Because we just could not get that patient information over there any other way.
Right.
So we are hoping this win that, stat this, smart that, we'll get it all done this year. We are looking forward to testing out the Starlink this year with this hurricane exercise.
Yes.
And we're just great.
Talk about communications with the hospitals. Each hospital now has a hand radio. I have a hand radio in this building. Got one in Franklin also. So at least we'll have something. VHF radios are away to office if you need them. Some of the hospitals, I believe, they have their own radio systems inside.
Yes. I'm Joey Calavano with the region, Chicago University. We do have our own communication system within. It's grown to the point where we can talk across the region.
Good.
Here at St. Mary, we can talk always the same.
Great.
Yeah, so that was one of our biggest improvements since I got it. I think we're going to do well with it.
Great. Glad to hear that. So that means the mayor of Martin City can go to the hospital and talk to.
And we also give them a radio as well to back up. Right.
Martin City has a radio, so.
Everybody
Great.
did get the stat code, but I mean, of course, I have the hospitals and OPH's satellite phone numbers, but some of those area codes are London, some need a 00, some need 2 1s and a 0 before the number.
Yeah.
I think if you guys share that within St. Mary Parish in whole before the actual events come, because those numbers are quite long, and depending on your cell phone provider, it's kind of tricky to type those sat phone numbers into your phone. Commissioner, you'll have this before.
Yeah, if everybody didn't hear, sorry, Kim. If you got a satellite phone and it's used for emergencies or whatever, pass that on, so we can make a list for everybody, because after the storm, you won't be able to do that. That would help. Starlink system she had mentioned, we have 4. One's for the sheriff's office, one's at 911, and I have 2 for the OEP office for after a storm if needed. And the 2 that I have will be able to talk from Morgan City to Franklin or whatever. You can, after you hook up a Starlink, you can go cellular on your phone, cell phone, and you can transmit that way, talk that way over your phone. Any questions? Anything else? If anything else, anybody wants to bring anything else up, email me or Janet, and we'll get that out to everybody on the mailing list. Remember, if we don't have your mailing list address on email on the paper outside, put it on there so we can get you up on our list. Okay, I want to